Welcome everyone to May's 3 on 3. This is Mental Health Awareness Month. We have three of our best in our industry to answer 3 questions today on mental health awareness. Would you guys please start off by introducing yourselves?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Tom Boorsma. I am with Churchill Mortgage, so I'm on the lending side, and I have been with Churchill just shy of 3 years now, and came from an industry completely unrelated to lending or real estate. I was actually in blue-collar line of work prior to that. So I love it. It's everything I'd hoped and a little bit more, which we'll probably get into in a bit here. But yeah, that's who I am. I'm married. Got 4 kids, 14 on down to 6. Girls on the end, boys in the middle. It's a busy life, but love it. And I'm excited to be here today. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
My name is Renee Privette. I'm with eXp Realty. I'm an individual agent there. And I'm coming up on my 3-year anniversary of being an agent. Also was in a completely unrelated field prior to real estate. I'm getting married next Saturday. So
congratulations.
For me, and doing a lot of these managing my stress techniques as we're coming up on that. But yeah, just really enjoy the industry, the relational aspects with clients and also with fellow agents and industry professionals.
Cool. Glad to be doing this with you too. I am Sarah Takens. I'm with RE/MAX of Grand Rapids. I'm associate broker, been in the business for 7 years. And I too dabbled in many careers before this with a background in law. So it's a lot of fun and it's stressful, so I'm really happy that we get to talk about this. On top of that, I am a single mom of 4, and one's graduating this year, and the youngest one is in 1st grade, and she's extremely accident prone, so we've been in and out of the hospital a lot. So managing stress with that stuff comes with the territory.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. I'm Duffy McClelland, owner-broker at Lakewood Real Estate. I've been in the business for this summer will be my 31st year. I live in a rural Lake Odessa area between here and Lansing. And yeah, married and a couple kids that are adults, so they're pretty easy at this point. Sarah, why don't we start with you? What are things you do to manage your stress level?
There's a lot that can be done, but for me personally, I think the first thing I realize is that there's a lot that I don't have control over, and recognizing that and giving up a lot of the control that I just want to take and make the situation mine allows me to realize that it's just my response that matters and not what's actually happening in front of me. There's that. I also have a friend group that I can trust with everything, where I go, hey, is this my trauma or is this real life? Like, what is the situation? Am I handling it correctly? So it helps to make sure that my stress is in check, that I'm not bringing my own issues into whatever the situation is. And then I stopped comparing. That was a big one for me. When I stopped trying to achieve all those award statuses and keeping up with all the other agents, no matter what level they're at or what they had going on, I really began to enjoy real estate and enjoy the people that I worked with rather than just chasing the next award.
That can definitely translate into life on a lot of different levels. Yeah. Teddy Roosevelt said, comparison is a thief of joy.
Yes, I say that a lot.
Yeah, it's so true.
Well, this industry is hard because it's like trends are constantly changing. There's a million different ways to do it. So yeah, like my first 2 years was just constantly like, I need to be doing that. Oh, I need to be doing that. I need to be doing that. And it just layers on additional stress. So I totally hear that.
Yeah, one thing I've found, so I hate working on my own vehicles, hate vehicle repairs, always have, but since entering this industry, I have to admit that there are times where it's a great mental release for me. I realized that a couple weeks ago. I did a brake job on one of my vehicles, and I got done, and it was at the end of a particularly rough week, and it was just nice to see something completed. It was nice to have a start to finish, to see it, to know you did it, And so that's just a small snippet of something I've noticed since entering the industry, where it tends to be a little bit less physical and more mental. I get greater joy out of the accomplishments that come through physical work. My previous industry was all physical, and so it's nice to do it, enjoy it, feel the fulfillment of it. So that's one thing. And then my wife Tara, she helps out too with this. She's really good at making sure we find vacation time. I'm terrible at it. I think left to myself, I probably would never take one. But my wife, she'll just tell me when camping's in the calendar, and that's when it's happening. So those are a few things to add on to what's already been said.
Yeah, I definitely think physical activity is paramount to people's stress levels. I'm a big believer in getting outside and getting some fresh air and going for a run or a walk for sure.
I think being as routine as possible too really helps limit the stress because you already know what's coming up as much as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, the basics, just like getting enough sleep, eating right, and exercising. And I come from the exercise world, and it's amazing how people look to exercise to lose weight or gain muscle, but really the mental effects of exercise are way more instantaneous than gaining muscle and losing weight. So like I can feel my stress levels go down instantaneously, like after a workout. And I think fitting that into your routine and into the schedule is paramount.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said about having kind of a minimalistic approach to just doing those basics of making sure you're well fed, making sure you get some exercise, making sure you stay organized. What resources are there available for those who are dealing with mental health issues?
So I think once you have the basics covered, then you can kind of dive in, like Sarah mentioned, of like, okay, is this my trauma? Like, is this just, my personality tending to go this direction or that? And so like there's meditation apps, there's, things you can do to get your exercise in. There's a lot of tools available, but at some point I think we can't be afraid to consult professional help. And that's something that I've done the last few years, and it's been a game changer for me. So there's a lot of great organizations in the city of Grand Rapids where you can find a therapist. There's an app that I've heard really good things about called BetterHelp, and it's completely online for people that want to do online therapy. It's not for everybody, but kind of finding the resources and the professional help that you need, I think, is huge.
Yeah, I would add to that. As I thought about this question, it occurred to me one might answer differently than another based on to what level you're feeling some mental stress. Obviously, there's on the more serious side, you might actually need some clinical help, from a medical professional. But I think a lot of us really just do ourselves a disservice by not taking advantage of the resources we have. The first one being, like you mentioned, the outdoors. But then gyms, parks, rec leagues, maybe art studios, stuff like that. Just something that, you can remove work, even if it's for 30 minutes, and put on something completely different, and don't allow yourself to be interrupted in that moment. Just those small moments of refreshing yourself, I think, make a huge difference throughout the day. One of the things we started doing at our office, we've been there 3 years now, and we've known for a while that there's a walking path that goes kind of around our building, but no one ever walked it. But now that the weather's turned, after lunch often we'll take a quick walk. It's only about a 7-minute loop, but it's been a big difference. Just going outside, getting fresh air, getting the sunshine now that it's actually shining. All of that makes a big difference and helps you, push through the afternoon. So taking advantage of what's available, but certainly, like Renee said, seeking out that professional help when it's necessary.
Yeah, I'll go with a little more serious side because it's what I tend to do. 988 is the suicide prevention hotline. If you call them, they will not send you to a loony bin. So you can call them and just have somebody to talk to. Sometimes that's all you need is just an unbiased ear to listen, and it creates a world of difference. If you are in Ottawa or Kent County, both have really, really upped their mental health availability. If you go on their website and just look up Ottawa County Mental Health or Kent County Mental Health, it brings up a whole website of just tons of resources, both online, ways to connect, DHHS help if you need that. And then just be willing to be honest with yourself, I think is the other thing. Like if you are, if you feel like you're struggling, go see your doctor. Like there is absolutely nothing wrong with taking medications for short-term, long-term, whatever you need. And you'll be surprised at how much better you feel sometimes when you get just that little boost of help. So if you feel like bubble baths and journaling aren't doing it for you, then, take that next step.
Yeah. Well, I think there's certainly a stigma that I hope is being broken down publicly about mental health. No one would ever shame you, nor would you shame yourself if you found out you had cancer and you started to go into an oncologist. So, getting into seeing someone, if it gets to that level, is important. Tom, how do you separate emotions from transactions in the business from seeping into your personal life?
Oh, this question hit home because we can probably all recall, for me and Renee, maybe a little bit more recently, but the first time you lose a deal or the first time you deliver what you think is just an incredible experience and the client's like, I'm going another direction. And you're just caught off guard. You're like, but why? I gave you everything. And sometimes you can't explain it because they won't share. But as I was reading this question, I was thinking about that. I was thinking back to the first couple clients I spoke with that for whatever reason went another direction, and how much. I mean, I carried it with me for the rest of the day and into the next day, and I brought it home and shared it with my wife, and next thing you know, my whole family's involved, and they didn't sign up for that. So a few things that I've done is I've tried to reframe the thought process and step a year into the future, if that's possible, and say, how will I feel about this in a year? And now that I've got almost 3 years under my belt, I know what that looks like. So for anyone brand new, trust me, in a year, you're going to be well beyond this. And I think it takes some reps. You have to go through some moments of, losing out on a deal, not getting a listing that you've been working for, before you actually believe that in a year, you might look back and just kind of laugh and just be like, you know what, it's probably for the better. I think we can all acknowledge that there are some that it stings in the moment, but when we find out how they played out, or we look at it a little bit closer, you realize, it probably wasn't a great fit. Probably wouldn't have been a good experience for either of us. I'm looking for an experience that generates referrals, and if this thing was going to go sideways, the only referrals I might have gotten were the ones I don't want, and that is avoid that guy. So I think just coming to terms and being comfortable with you're not going to win them all. I am not the loan officer for everyone, and not everyone out there and their personalities match me. So coming to terms with that was, and that takes time. But once you get some of those reps in, I think the recovery time, if you will, shortens significantly.
Yeah, those experiences definitely help you build confidence for the next go around.
Yeah, and you learn from them. I mean, you don't accept. You're not happy that you lost out, but it gives you a chance to reflect. What did I do wrong? What could I have done better? And improve from there.
Which are great experiences in itself.
Yeah.
Well, it kind of ties back to what Sarah said in the first question. Like, there's so much out of our control in this industry. So if like you're basing your worth based on other people's decisions and all these things that you can't control, then you're going to lose every time. Whereas like when you establish your worth based on who you are, the service that you give, you control that, but we don't control the outcome. And that is so hard to keep at the front of your mind.
It is. For my own situation, like we've been through so many traumatic events just in the last year that my foremost focus is always my kids, and a lot of times my younger two are with me. So showings, not so much listing appointments. It's, set a boundary somewhere. But for a lot of the showings, my kids will come with me because let's be honest, half those houses they're not going to bid on, so I'm not going to sit here and try to find coverage for everything. But when they're with me, so for me, it's almost the question is reversed. How do I keep my personal life from seeping into my business world? And that's tough. That's really hard to do. There's times that I've cried all the way to appointments and be like, oh, the pollen is so bad today. 'Cause I'm like pretending it's allergies instead of me just crying. But I found that the best way for me is to just make sure my boundaries are in place and that I'm holding the line on those boundaries. Remembering that not all money is good money. And so if there's people that are causing resentment or like you just have that gut feeling or like when they call you like, I've released them. I'm not automatically, if that's my response, I'm not the right agent for them. And so I'm like, what, I think you'd be better paired with somebody else. And I part ways in good terms. And, I do wish them well. I give them referrals of people who I think they would mesh with really well, whether they choose them or not. And then I check my own ego. A lot of times, like our stress comes from our own ego getting in the way and, wanting to be the best. And there's just times you're not.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And you just got to realize where you're at.
Renee, as you navigate the busy season, how do you keep self-care a priority?
So I feel like these questions kind of all tie in together because I literally wrote down boundaries, boundaries, boundaries.
She did. It's true.
But yeah, setting the boundary and then just being consistent with it. I had 0 boundaries my first 2 years, and it made me want to completely leave the industry. And then even just setting a simple boundary of I made an 8 to 8 rule. So 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. I told my clients, you can expect me to respond. If you text me a question or a showing request, I'll get back to you. But if it's after 8, I'll get back to you the next morning. And was terrified to set that, but people respected it.
Yeah.
But then there's the days it comes in at 8:05 and I'm like, I'll just respond real quick. But then it's like I'm on my phone till 10. So I've kind of realized just how healthy those boundaries are for the client and for myself and just what a difference that makes, especially in the busy season because we have showing requests coming in all the time. Houses are listed for 4 days. You got to get in before the deadline and things. But it's all possible if you're consistent with your schedule, as you kind of had mentioned, and consistent with the boundaries. And then just making time for that self-care. So having your schedule, whether I'm in the busy season or the slow season, this is my routine. I exercise, I pray, I meditate, whether I have 10 showings that day or 1, kind of keeping that schedule consistent really helps.
Sarah, your thoughts on self-care and keeping it a priority? How do you maintain that balance?
I play a lot of music. Music is constantly on, so you can just dance it out if we get stressed or overwhelmed. But also recognizing that if I only have the energy to take a nap that day, I've done 100% of what I can give. And just being okay with that. There's some days that me especially, I just can't do it. And if I'm aware of that, before I know it, if I just take that nap, I'm ready to go. I can do it. Where if I fight that the whole day, it can just steamroll into the next 3 days. So if I just, today's not going to be that day, and I do that self-care and make sure that I'm where I should be, then we're good. And then the other thing I do is I win the morning. As you're saying, working out, I have a specific routine from 6 a.m. to 8:30 a.m. that I do every single day. Every single day. Dishes, animals, working out, shower, everything in the morning. And once I've won that 2.5 hour span, I know I can do anything the rest of the day.
That's great. Tom, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah. I think the timing of this is really it's a great time to ask me this question. The spring is the busiest time of year for my family personally. I've got 4 kids, like I mentioned. All 4 are playing sports. and I'm also a varsity girls soccer coach, and varsity girls play in the spring. So we have 5 soccer teams going on in our life, on top of a demanding industry with crazy deadlines, and everybody wants a refresh pre-approval for every offer. That all factors in. So one thing my wife and I have had to do is we used to do Sunday night before we went to bed, we would look at our schedule and plan out the week, and we would figure out the logistics of the week. The past few weeks, it's been so busy, we're literally doing it every night. We plan out the next day. You're bringing these kids here, I'll pick them up, and we'll make it work. And obviously, doing that year-round, not sustainable. But we know that spring is always the busiest for us. So the moral of the story being, have a plan. Acknowledge, know, when are you going to be busy? And most of us know the rhythms of the industry. We can figure out kind of when we're going to be at our busiest. Know that, acknowledge it, and have a plan ahead of time so that you're not living in a constant state of spontaneity. I think both our industries, real estate and on the lending side, we have a tendency to allow ourselves to only get rest where there's capacity for it. We don't build it in. So rest just kind of fills in the cracks. So I got a half hour here, I got an hour here. I'm finally home at 9 o'clock at night. 45 minutes and I'm going to crash on the couch. That's the only time we give ourselves to recoup during the day, and we fool ourselves often into thinking, I've got a pretty healthy work-life balance. When in reality, we don't, because it's all over the place, and we haven't structured, we haven't planned for what gives us an ideal day that allows us to function at our highest capacity. So I think setting those plans in place and understanding, too, that there are going to be some seasons that have less rest than others, and we just have to accept that. But knowing it ahead of time to brace for it, I think makes a big difference. I know it does for me. For all points and purposes, the soccer season wraps up in about 2 weeks, and I'll tell you what, I can't wait for the first week of June because it's going to feel like a total vacation, even though I'm not on vacation. There's just be a lot more hours freed up. But in the meantime, for 2.5 months in the spring, you buck up, you deal with it, but you plan for it.
Yeah.
So,
well, we've talked about routines and staying in them and how helpful that can be. That's part of that, staying organized, getting organized, trying to minimize the chances of stress creeping into our lives. What's some more advice you guys might give to someone who's feeling overwhelmed? And whoever wants to take this one first. Renee, do you want to start?
Yeah, I think it's kind of starts with calling it out, and like us three, we're giving tips and we're giving insight into our lives, but none of us have it perfect. And I think stress and mental illness for sure really takes hold when you keep it to yourself and you think everyone out there in this industry has got it together except for me. All the moms got it together except for me. All the coaches got it together except for me. And then that's when that stress really takes root. And just for me personally, just sharing and putting stuff on social media, talking to therapists, talking to friends, and just saying and it's not for everyone to know, but I'm really struggling today. Can you just sit with me, or can I just talk to you for a second? And there's just so much power in speaking that. And as you mentioned at the beginning, Duffy, just the stigma of mental illness. I think we are chipping away at it, but it's definitely still there. And even when I was considering going on medication, it's no one wanted to talk about the medication they were on because they were embarrassed. And I wanted feedback, especially from women. It's okay, what worked for you, what didn't, with hormones and things. And so I just think the more we can talk and share with each other, we're all on the same team. I like to say that, the human team. And we're just in it together, and we're all trying our best. And the more we can kind of communicate that and share with each other, I think the better we'll all be.
Yeah, having a tribe to turn to or a team to turn to, people that are positive, the old saying about, surrounding yourself with 5 people that will lift you up. has been very, very helpful in my life as well. People I run with or whatever that you can always just count on for some positive energy, and to kind of check you every now and then if it's just if they can go, no, that's you.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I would just add to that, and as I'll speak as a guy, I've noticed, and I don't think it's rocket science, men in particular tend to really hold this stuff in, and I'm the poster boy for it. And what often happens, sad to say, is we have a tendency to often revert towards negative habits to find release, and I think we're all susceptible to that. But again, I'm speaking as a man to men. That's something that we're prone to, and I would just caution people, or caution guys, especially along those lines. There's no extra credit for appearing tough. People can see through the facade, and the sooner that we can acknowledge, hey man, we got something going on that we got to deal with, I think we're better for it. I have often talked with my kids about the circle of friends that we have, and Duffy, you kind of alluded to this, but I have 4 close friends that they know they have full permission to speak into my life at any time about anything, and get in my face if necessary. Not everyone has that has permission to do that, but I think it's important to have some that they know you well, and they're not afraid to step in and say, hey, something's off, what's going on, and ask the hard questions. And yeah, I think it's helpful that person not be your spouse, if you are married, or your significant other, because there's a lot of other things that they're wrestling with too. I mean, you have a relationship there, and I think it's helpful to have a good, trusted friend who cares about that relationship enough to be willing to speak into whatever you have going. So, yeah, kind of twofold there, but I would just, and this is something I'm working on. I'm not an expert at this, but I'm just now in my late 30s starting to come around to the idea of opening up more and not trying to find that relief in negative habits, because a lot of times once those take hold, busting out of them becomes a lifetime's worth of work. So,
well, like you said, being honest with ourselves is sometimes very hard. Even when we think we've got it up against the ropes, it's still kind of hard to be critical of yourself and pick those things apart. Sarah, do you have anything you'd like to add to that as far as advice you'd like to give to someone who's feeling overwhelmed? Maybe some things you've done in the past that have helped?
Yeah, I think just being vulnerable, being aware that you're in that place, and not being afraid to do the reaching out, and to even just do the work on yourself. Recognize that some of the things we go through are self-created, and so we need to figure out what we're doing wrong so that we can correct that behavior and move forward in a different direction. There's just like real estate. We chase those shiny new objects and chase those next ideas, and probably 80% of my ideas have failed, and so we adapt and overcome, and we move forward with the next thing that we feel like, okay, like this is going to be a staple of my business. This is what I'm going to do. And then be realistic with yourself. Realize how much you can actually do in a day based on where you're at. We can't all do podcasts once a week. We can't all do, door knocking every day. We can't all make 50 calls a day. And, while all of this advice comes from really well-meaning and successful people, it might not be for you. And it's okay. It's okay to do your business anyway. That's why it's your business. So do your business the way that it makes sense for you to relieve that stress.
Yeah, it's hard to be your best anything, whether it's a mom or a dad or an agent or a loan officer, if you're not taking care of yourself. I think there's a lot to be said for that. I really appreciate you guys coming out, taking the time to do this.